Hello and welcome to week 4. I wanted to go over a couple of pretty important points for this week. This week is usually one of the most confusing weeks out of the entire semester because of this replicate assignment. You will also have a replicate assignment next week, but those are the only 2 weeks that you have this replicate assignment, and it usually throws people off. So I'm hoping that this explanation video will help clear that up. So on Saturday, you submitted your photos for peer review, and that was editing original imagery. So you were using Lightroom to edit your photos, and you needed to turn them to black and white. This week, your photos will also be turned to black and white, except for your replicate photos, because these are not the same photos as what you took last week. Okay, so let's take a look at these replicate photos. Here in the instructions, it talks about you need to choose one photo from the shallow depth of field group and one from the maximum depth of field group. So here are the example photos that you need to be replicating. To achieve a shallow depth of field image, there are 2 ways to do it. One is to get really close to a subject and adjust your focal length so that the background is blurry. And that gives you the look of a shallow depth of field photo. However, if your aperture, I want you to figure out how to make a shallow depth of field image by changing your aperture. Your aperture needs to be small. So, if I get in and I'm looking at your photos and you have this blurry, buttery background, but it's just because you adjusted your focal length and got really close to the subject and your aperture is still set to like 8, I don't believe that that is really achieving shallow depth of field, because it could be shallower. Okay, maximum depth of field. I hate this photo number 6. I don't believe that it is a good example of maximum depth of field. Every semester I have people choose number 6 to replicate. Maximum depth of field basically means that the most things are in focus in the image. So at every depth of the image, it's in focus. And this photo, it's small, so it's hard to tell even, but this photo in front is out of focus. And this is just a small bouquet of flowers. This does not represent maximum depth of field. Please do not choose image number 6 to replicate. Other than that, you are welcome to replicate any of these other images. All of these are really great examples of shallow depth of field. Okay? And your photos should replicate these. Obviously, you wouldn't need to turn somebody's feet black to replicate it. You could just have somebody lay on a bed and take a picture of their feet. Okay? It doesn't have to be exact. If you are replicating photo number 3 and you have flowers by a window, then I'm expecting to see the depth behind. If it's just all whited out and blurry, it's pretty hard to tell that you have that shallow depth of field if it's just all white. So make sure that you're choosing the correct time of day if you're planning to replicate this photo. I am not so I'm not as interested in you guys making sure that I know in the past it said choose the middle of the day to get the best light. You're going to be choosing the best lighting to get this replication, okay? Also, make sure that your photos are in RAW, because when you go in to edit them, you're going to find during this class that RAW is your friend, and you are going to learn to love it. I promise. It's pretty amazing. All right, so that is going to help you with your replicate depth of field already. Don't choose 6. And if you choose 3, don't have it be white out the window. You do still need to have some kind of color background back there to show me that you're actually having that shallow depth of field, okay? All right, let's go out, and I wanted to look at next week's duplicate or replicate. So now week 5, we're going to have the replicate motion. All right, I don't want to get too far ahead, okay? But the way to get blurred photos is, first, you need to have a tripod. If you don't have a tripod, you need to be setting your camera up on something. It's going to be so hard for you to get a clear image of motion if you're moving and the subject is moving. You're going to end up with something similar to 7, which isn't terrible, but this person still held pretty still to get this because she was moving both her cello and her body while playing this. And if the photographer had been moving a lot as well, the photo would probably be almost impossible to tell what's even going on. Okay? And frozen motion means that your shutter speed is fast enough, which I prefer over 1/80th of a second. It's fast enough to freeze it. So if you are watching this and you're like, I'm right in the middle of learning depth of field and now I've got to think about this, just come back to this part of the video next week and we'll talk about it more. And here we have photo number 4. Please exercise safety. You're just replicating somebody jumping. They don't have to be jumping off of something crazy like this person is doing, okay? Don't do that. All right. Okay, so let's go back out to our, let's go out to modules and talk about some other questions that will come up this week. Okay. So you saw your peer review that's going on this week from what you turned in on Saturday. Then you're going to learn about exposure more and depth of field. You're going to turn in your final submission for edit original imagery. So basically to turn this final submission in, what you do is you take the photos from the peer review, those 5 photos. You can make corrections, you can reshoot them, whatever. Just make sure they're in the same Flickr album. And then that final submission is basically sharing the link to these peer review photos in Flickr, and then telling me which 2 you want me to grade. That's all you're doing with these. It's not really a separate assignment. It's the same thing continued. Okay? And then you're moving on to start taking your depth of field photos, your replicate depth of field photos, your photo capture for depth of field, your peer review for depth of field, and then do not forget your accountability quiz. You should also be aware that tomorrow is the drop date for this course. So if you are behind, if you've missed more than 2 major assignments, and you still have not gotten me your photographer's information quiz, and you haven't shown me that you have the correct Lightroom yet, then you should truly consider dropping the course or talking to me immediately so that we can make a plan. Okay? All right. Thank you for watching this, and as usual, please leave comments under the announcements so that others who may have the same questions can have them answered. I'm looking forward to seeing more of your photos, and I've been working on grading your photos from last week, and they're looking awesome, so great job, everybody.